about a couple weeks ago down in Texas. So the industries aren't going to go away, and we really think that this is an opportunity for there to be a career in the cleaning and restoration industry. And so workforce development, I think, is vitally important. Next one, Gavin. So here's some of the mold remediation bills and legislation that we've seen. This is not all of it by any means, but this is just kind of the important topics. So the Virginia bill, which many may already be aware of. So this bill was passed. It was originally, oddly enough, it was a building inspection bill. So under the original language, you wouldn't be able to get a building permit unless you inspected the house for black mold, and then got it remediated. And so when I saw the bill come across, I immediately said, well, there's hundreds of species of mold that aren't exactly black, and that can be detrimental to your health. And also, if it's being remediated, it should be remediated in accordance with the S520. And so I reached out to the legislator, and she said, yeah, we'll make those changes. And come to find out that the Builders Association wasn't a massive fan of it. And so she said, we're going to make some additional changes to the bill. And next thing I know, about a week and a half later, there's this random bill that's under the Virginia Consumer Protection Act, requiring IICRC certifications. There were some additional issues with the bill that we tried to resolve. Not everything that I had said got into the final bill, but we were able to include the AMRT. At first, it was just the MRS, and we thought that wouldn't be ideal for a lot of people, especially with the fact that there were so many people in and around Virginia that already had the AMRT, and that would be able to comply with the bill. So that became law as of July 1st, and is law on the books today. Illinois just recently passed an amendment to the Mold Remediation Registration Act. Back in 2007, they passed the Mold Remediation Registration Act, but the regulations were never put into place. I was contacted, and the IICRC was contacted by some stakeholders that wanted to advocate for implementing those. And so they just passed this bill also unanimously, and it's on the governor's desk right now. That would create a public awareness campaign for mold. That this is mold. This is why you shouldn't have it remediated properly. References to the S520, and then also parties that are performing mold remediation in the state. There would be a list on the Department of Public Health's website of those that are certified in the state of Illinois. In order to be on that list, you have to show that you do have an active certification from the IICRC normie or any other certification that the department may approve. And so we won't know exactly how that operates, how to get on that list until the department creates those rules. That'll, and again, it's up to the governor to sign it, but it passed unanimously. I kind of foresee that the governor will more than likely sign that bill. The Texas, many may not be aware of this. Texas last year created a mold assessment and remediation advisory board. There's a typo there. I didn't add remediation in there, but it's a mold assessment and remediation advisory board. It's a group of diverse folks, licensed remediators, licensed assessors, folks from the insurance industry, regular old Texans that are on this to provide technical advice on standards of care, qualifications for licensure, and anything else related to their mold licensing program to the Department of Licensing and Regulation. I think the department really wanted some experts involved in the process to really fix some of the issues that they kept hearing about down there in the state of Texas. And so the advisory board, I believe, has met at least once, maybe twice. I think I've watched 2 of their meetings. Mainly it hasn't been anything substantive at the moment, but they will be meeting on kind of a regular basis. If you are in Texas, I would suggest watching those. And obviously, I'll be watching them too. And also the advisory board, there are term limits on the advisory board. So if you are interested in potentially being on the advisory board, reach out to me, let me know. And we can try and figure out, I'll let you know when the elections are coming up. I have no control over who's on the board or anything like that, but I can at least let you know, when applications may be due and things like that. Next one, Gavin. Trauma and crime scene. Like I said, there hasn't been too much legislation on this area, but I think this is up and coming. And this is actually the second or third time I've seen a bill out of New Jersey that would have regulated the trauma scene waste management industry, which trauma and crime scene, trauma scene waste management, same stuff. Um, the bill, I've had about 2 or 3 meetings with the senator's office via phone call and things like that. The way the bill is currently written, which we have offered multiple amendments to, um, would say that each employee has to be licensed and then the company has to be licensed. Each employee has to have a certification that meets federal requirements for biohazard industry training. And then each key employee, which is somebody that has some sort of discretionary control over, property manager or not property manager, uh, project manager over whatever project you have would have to be certified by ABRA, and also would have to provide a written statement certifying that the applicant staff is knowledgeable about the IICRC S540. We've offered a multitude of amendments, being IICRC certification should be included, as well as that the staff should not just simply be knowledgeable that the S540 exists, but that they should actually be implementing it and utilizing it in their everyday work. So that's in New Jersey. The bill hasn't moved or done anything. It's just been kind of sitting there. But New Jersey is a full-time legislature, I believe, or close to it, and they move very slow in general. So next one, Gavin. Fire and wildfire restoration. So if you were unaware, the IICRC is currently working on 2 fire-related standards, fire restoration and wildfire investigation and restoration. Those are not the exact names, but the exact names are kind of lengthy and hard to remember. So, but it's the S700 and the S760. And so we're obviously seeing a lot of wildfire legislation. Again, like I said, there's a lot of mitigation efforts, but Colorado is one of the first ones that I saw that was focused on the remediation and restoration side of things. So back in 2021, there was a very bad fire called the Marshall Fire in Colorado that devastated a lot of homes, and a lot of individuals had to deal with restoration companies and restoring their homes. And some folks had some bad actors that did not remediate their home properly. And so a couple of legislators in the state of Colorado have or drafted up a bill that would require the Division of Insurance in Colorado to conduct a study regarding fire remediation and also recommend the establishment of uniform remediation standards. I have met with the legislators a couple of times. I've also met with the Division of Insurance, and we discussed the fact that the IICRC was creating and developing the S700 and the S760. So they changed the language a little bit in the bill. And so the Division of Insurance, during the study, the bill did pass, it is law. They're required to look at current standards, including specifically any relevant standards from the IICRC, which would include the S700 and the S760 as they would be relevant to the study as a whole. The study came about because of a wildfire, but the study itself is on fire and would include both fire and wildfires. In addition, the study committee is also, they do not have to, but they may, and they probably will, I would assume, consult relevant stakeholders, including those that perform remediation and restoration in Colorado. So if you are in Colorado and you want to be a representative, feel free to let me know as well. Again, I have no control over whether or not they do it. It's not required by law for them to talk with you or anything like that. But I can at least, if Division of Insurance comes to me and says, "Hey, do you know anybody in the state of Colorado that is in this industry?" I can, offer them up your name. Now the study committee, it's not one that's going to take 6 months. It's going to be a while, but they have to offer up those recommendations and everything by January 1st of 2026. They could always amend the bill to extend that time period, but as of right now, it's January 1st of 2026. And workforce development, again, like I said, I think certified firms are probably most interested in this area, and it's mainly because bills like this. So this is the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act. It's a very big bipartisan bill. It's been, I think, in Congress. It's been introduced in the last 2 Congresses, and right now we've got, as it says right there, 135 members of the House and 24 from the Senate Democrats and Republicans. That is very rare, as you probably are aware if you watch the news at all. But this bill would allow individuals to use their 529 savings plans and the funds that are in those plans for post-secondary credentials. So right now, you can really only use your 529 savings plans for college expenses. This would expand that to allow them to use and get things such as IICRC certifications. So we are currently in a lame duck session, which means in Congress, which means that nobody's really doing anything because we don't know what's going to happen in November. So nobody knows who's going to be in certain agencies, who's going to be, the cabinet secretaries and things like that. So, but the bill actually made some movement a couple of weeks ago. That the language of the bill was put into something which is somewhat unfortunate. It was put into something called the Education and Workforce Freedom Act, which did report out the House Committee 23-13. And the good thing is that it actually expands what is covered under the 529 savings plans to include post-secondary credentials from ANSI accredited programs, which would explicitly say the IICRC. Before it was the IICRC fits in the language, but this is more even better for IICRC certifications. However, they did also expand it to allow private and homeschool education, which is not a bipartisan issue by any means. That is a very partisan issue. And so it did pass the House Committee, but there's a lot of hoops for it to jump through. The HR 1477 could still theoretically pass by itself. But if it's already in this, it's going to probably move with this bill 8915. So we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. That's about all I can say at this point. Next one, Gavin. So you might be wondering, like, have they, has Congress, has states, have they ever used, IICRC like standards or IICRC certifications or private certifications or whatever? At the federal level, we have not really seen that quite yet. But there is something called incorporation by reference. And under the National Technology and Transfer Act, which was signed into law back in 1995, all federal agencies and departments have policy initiatives. They have policy objectives. In order to achieve those policy objectives, the agencies have to look to technical standards that are developed by voluntary consensus-based or voluntary consensus standard bodies. And so what that really means is that instead of developing their own, they essentially say, well, that standard over there, that ANSI standard, we're going to just adopt that and bring that into our agency regulations, which means that the standard essentially becomes law. Now they don't necessarily need to make it law. They can incorporate it and say, hey, this is a guideline, this is a suggestion. But oftentimes what they do is incorporation by reference is simply this is the law of the land. This is the law for the EPA or OSHA or whomever. And then certifications. So there are state radon programs. There are over 10 states, I believe, that have that require people that are performing radon mitigation to be certified by either the NRPP, which is the National Radon Proficiency Program, or the NRSB, which is the National Radon Safety Board. I can't remember which one it is, but one of them is just the certification wing of AARST, which is the essentially IICRC for the radon industry. And I believe they've just changed their name to the Environmental or the Indoor Environmental Association. I think that they did it. But there's also 14 states that require radon professionals to adhere to ANSI AARST standards. So using IICRC certifications or using IICRC ANSI standards, it would not be anything new. It's something that is regularly done and has already been done in other states. And Kentucky requires the S520, though it is the second edition. It does require the S520. And then obviously we're seeing Colorado look to IICRC standards. And then our certifications have obviously been used in the mold industry for Louisiana, Florida, and DC. Next one, Gavin. And so the United States government relies heavily on consensus-based standards, so much so that over 23,000 sections of the Code of Federal Regulations actually includes references to voluntary consensus-based standards. And since 2019 alone, there have been over 387 pieces of legislation that reference American National Standards Institute standards, so ANSI related standards. So it just shows you how much the government relies on, and oftentimes the government will participate and be a member on a consensus body. I was up at ANSY's big annual event, and they're actually working on a consensus standard for commercial travel to the moon. They're actually getting people together and having Zoom meetings to develop, standards for how to get people to the moon on a commercial basis, like as we do with airliners and stuff. So very interesting. There's a standard for pretty much everything, is what I tell people. But the U.S. government relies on them a lot. Next. And so you may be asking, okay, how do I get involved in this? I'd love your input. I'd love for you to tell me, that you want to assist and help. So that email right there, advocates at iicrcnet.org, is a good place to reach me. I check that email every single day. So if there's something in your state or your country, or wherever you're at, your locality, that you think, I think an IICRC certification or an IICRC standard could really, fix this problem, or then feel free to reach out. That's pretty much what I do every day, is meet with legislators, meet with constituents, to discuss how we can bring IICRC certifications and standards to the forefront, and in government regulations. Um, Next one, Gavin. And if you want to even go further, come to our second annual IICRC Educating the Advocates Symposium. It's going to be on October 2nd, 2024, later this year in Las Vegas, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's a free event. And that RSVP link right there can take you there. If you can't type it up or you don't want to type it up, again, email advocates at iicrcnet.org. You can ask any questions. I can send you the link. You probably should have gotten one from our marketing team, that probably 2 weeks ago, a week ago. And so you may have already RSVP'd. We are going to have special guest, Congresswoman Dina Titus, who is the actual Congresswoman for the IICRC headquarters. So she's going to come and speak for a little bit. We'll have some other special guests to come and speak. But it's gonna be nice. And so we're going to get everybody together, other stakeholders, certified firms, and local realtors, property managers, whoever, to come and learn about IICRC, the standards and certifications we have, and the importance of government advocacy and just how to do it. So love to have you all there. And if you have any questions, obviously feel free to ask. But that's all for me today.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I did get a couple of questions while we were going through this regarding the newest S590 standard, regarding reporting and documenting HVAC systems after a fire, mold, or water event.
Yeah.
So definitely getting some engagement there. Does anybody else have any questions? Any of our attendees have any questions for Robbie? Oh, we got one. Can you tell us more about what to expect from the event?
Yeah. So the event, what's essentially going to happen is, we're just going to have everybody there, kind of to learn all the certifications that the IICRC has, all the standards that we have, how they're developed, how they operate, and then also how to be an advocate. So how you yourself can talk to your legislator, because I think a lot of times, certified firms and certified technicians come to me and they say, well, I don't even know who my legislator is. And I don't think people realize how easy it is to actually talk to your legislator, especially at the state level. At Congress, they feel so far away, but at the state level, you've probably seen your state legislator in a coffee shop or something somewhere. And it's really easy to have a conversation. It's really easy to say, hey, have you ever heard about the IICRC? Have you ever heard about, the S500 or the S590, or the S100, the carpet cleaning standard? I mean, have you ever heard about these? And oh, no, I haven't. Chances are they probably haven't. But they have heard about ANSI standards. They've heard about private certifications. And they could be ready to put forth legislation, or to talk to an agency about potentially utilizing IICRC standards or IICRC certifications, in their next, legislative session or regulatory proposals.
Awesome. And I did get a compliment for you, Robbie, from Craig Powers. Said, well done, Robbie. Thank you for your efforts and your advocacy.
Craig is awesome, and I liked working with him on we put together a response to an OSHA standard, and Craig was very helpful in all that. So thank you, Craig.
Awesome, awesome. Anybody else have any additional questions? No dumb questions, no crazy questions. Anything goes. Seeing any new open questions. Now you're gonna wrap up things a little early here. You are still gonna get your full as I live and breathe. There we go. Nadine has a question. I'll allow you to ask it yourself. Nadine, here you go.
Okay, my name is Nadine Marsh Coleman from Surf Pro, Pentisville. I have a question regarding the trauma waste management license. Is it required in Georgia where I'm located? Or is it going to be a standard requirement for every state? One company asked about that license so far in order to be on their network.
Okay, so it's not a license per se. The way and I can I'll double check the exact language for you, Nadine. But the Georgia one is, I believe you just have to register with the Secretary of State, I believe is the agency. And all you're doing is saying, hey, I do trauma crime scene cleanup in the state of Georgia. That's about it. From my understanding, there's no licensure, there's no certification requirement, there's no standards that you have to follow or anything like that. It is simply just that you register with the state. But that is only the state of Georgia. There is no other state that I'm aware of that requires that. I think California has some regulation, but I believe it's just that you have to follow their guidelines, which are a little outdated in my opinion. But that's about it. So it's not every state by any means. No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you, Nadine. Norris says Florida as well. Can you elaborate, Norris?
Yeah, are you referencing they require trauma crime scene cleaners to be licensed?
You have a mic, Norris. I can go ahead and unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I was referencing the transport and storage for trauma clean. Not licensing.
Yeah, a lot of states will have, licensure for biohazard transportation. But yeah, like Norris said, they typically have that. There just isn't anything in place in really any state that requires, licenses or procedures to be followed when it comes to the cleaning process. They do have one thing that they do have is almost every state, and y'all will probably be more familiar with this than I am, but almost every state has a victim's crime compensation regulation, and so they can provide victims and their families funds for crime scene cleanup. It's usually a menial amount of money, but that is one area that they, I guess, regulate crime scene cleanup, but they don't really regulate who does it or who can do it, rather.
Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Norris, for that.
All right. Anybody else? Anybody else got some questions, compliments, concerns? Not seeing or hearing anything. So I will go ahead and officially wrap up this month's webinar. Thank you for all who joined and attended live. Like I said, everybody will get their hour of continuing education credit. Please allow 3 to 5 business days for that typically. And then this recording also, although it's a little choppy, that was my mistake. Sorry, I interrupted you, Robbie. And I forgot I paused the recording and then had to restart it. But most 90% of this webinar will be available on your toolbox as well. So for any of our certified firms, if you access your certified firm profile and click on toolbox, it'll be under the webinars drop down. So you'll be able to find it and rewatch this if you need any information off this webinar. You can also feel free to email me if you don't want to bother Robbie. You can certainly bother me. My email is mcmahon@iicrcnet.org. So the same domain everybody else, every other team uses, just my first initial last name. It's right here on my video here. Everybody's saying great job, Robbie. I agree, you did an awesome job. Thank you for stepping in and doing this for the certified firms team. Thank you, Angelina, for setting everything up and sending out the invites and joining us as well. And then that's all I got, unless anybody else has any other anything else they want to add. No. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.